Before I dive into Module 2 stuff, I want to talk about three things from Module 1. First, thank you for completing the survey. That really helps me in getting to know everybody in this class, so thank you. And then second one is about Lab 1B. I want to remind you all that you do have an option to send a second submission where if you have any kind of mistakes from your first submission, use the feedback to correct that and then turn something in by Tuesday, August 21st. Now, this only works, the second submission, if you actually turn in something for the first submission by the due date, and that would be Sunday, August 19th. So if you didn't turn something in by Sunday, August 19th, and then you try to submit it later, well, it's not going to work. Because remember, in the syllabus and also under Start Here and then Guidelines, I have a late assignment policy. Late submissions will not be accepted unless instructor approval is given to the student before the due date has passed. So it's important to communicate often and also to communicate early. And then the last thing I want to remind you all about Module 1 is that as you're preparing to work on Module 2 stuff and you have assignments or activities where you have to share a URL, well, it's a good idea to type in that URL into a web browser and then see if an image previews or if the page previews correctly. Because if it does not preview correctly from your end, then it's very possible that it's not going to work correctly for me either when you turn it into me and I open it. Now, moving on to Module 2. For your readings, we are still doing stuff from Introduction and Chapter 1 in the textbook, but then now I've added Chapter 2. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because each concept that we learn in class builds onto another. So we can't completely forget about what we learned previously because we're going to revisit them. We're going to keep adding on to what we're learning. And here's a roadmap of what we have going on for week number 2. There are several items on there, but not everything in this list is due on week 2. Starting with Lab 2, this is where you will create a simple sample web page. So just like Lab 1B, you'll be following along video tutorials. So this time I have 7 videos and they average about 10 minutes each, something like that. And your submission is due Sunday, August 26th, but then you have a optional second submission due on Tuesday, August 28th. So this is your opportunity to learn from your mistakes and then earn more points in the process. Now, the feedback can come from me when you turn in your assignment, your Lab 2. I'll give you feedback, but then discussion 2 is also something that you could use to look at feedback, because in discussion 2, I'm asking you all to look at each other's Lab 2 submission, look at the code, and then give feedback to one another. So if your classmate says, oh, you missed this part, then that's your opportunity to look at your code and say, oh yeah, I did miss that. Let me turn this in again. And this discussion 2 is related to Lab 2, obviously, but then there's also additional stuff to talk about. So in addition to sharing your Lab 2, you will also choose from one or more of these questions. Okay, and then quiz 1, this online quiz, you will not see this until you have marked as reviewed the Module 2 course materials folder in Module 2. That would be this one right here. And this quiz is over Module 1 and Module 2 stuff. And the quiz is set up to where you can start and stop as often as you would like to. So you could open the quiz, start on it, answer a couple of questions, save your responses, and then come back later on. However, you only get one submission attempt, so make sure it counts. Next, we have assignment 1. Now, assignment 1, you're not going to see any details for that if you scroll down until you submitted something for lab 2. Now, this is not due until week 3, Sunday, September 2nd, so you have a little bit of time. So take your time understanding what you're learning in lab 2, because you're going to use what you've learned so far to complete assignment 1. And related to assignment 1 is a discussion board. That would be discussion 3. And then finally, just to keep reminding you that you do have a website project, here's information about that. It's due Sunday, December 2nd. Now, as we're learning more and more concepts each week, you want to use that to complete your website project. So at this point, just start thinking about what you want to do for your website project. Look over the details on your website project. Okay, so to recap, by the end of week 2, what you have due are lab 2, discussion 2, and quiz 1. And then later on, you have assignment 1, discussion 3, and then the website project. So as always, I encourage you to keep a calendar so you don't miss any deadlines. And then also take a look at the calendar link here on the left, and that will give you a quick overview of what we have going on in class. And here are all those different due dates in visual format.